Okay, we're a couple days later, and I've got all these cross members cleaned up, at least as best as I can. There's a lot of corrosion on it. It's not rust, it's like oxidation from contact with water and elements within the water. I went through every one of these cross members is bolted twice, once on this side, one on the inside of the tune. Went through, tightened every one up. There's a couple bolts I had to replace. Surprising how loose they were. This thing probably rattled like crazy. So now we're ready to do the redecking. So to deck, I am using 3/4 inch marine grade plywood. Do not use green treated. Green treated is typically copper treated, and copper reacts with aluminum. When you mix two different types of metals together, they react. So what I'm going to do is, the old deck that came off this was actually tongue and grooved, like my original idea, where the boards will interlock inside of each other. On this, since I don't want to use the length, you lose the length, these stringers are on 24 centers, so an entire 4-foot sheet stopping on the center of one will stop on the center of the next one over, two ones over. So I'm going to do what's called a floating tongue. Every board will get a groove like this cut into it, and in that groove I will take a 1-inch wide piece of plywood and glue it in, and that will attach every deck board to the next deck board, and it'll make this one solid deck board. Has a lot of strength and rigidity. Make sure everything's lined up properly. If some boards are kind of warped a little bit, got a little bit of wave into it, it'll straighten itself out or match the next board. It's a good way to go. Take the extra time to do something like that, makes them much stronger. Titebond 3 will be the glue that I use. Titebond 3 is exterior grade waterproof glue. I use it for almost everything. It's insanely expensive, but I trust the stuff with literally my life because I glue every wood project together using this stuff. Another step is the brown paper that's sitting on top of here is actually a type of tape. It's a water seal tape. Pretty much what it is liquid tar. So it's like black roofing tar on tape back. So run it down. When I get ready to actually set the piece in place, I'll pull the tape or pull the brown paper off, leaving the black sealant. That will keep water from coming up between these joints, because these joints are actually going to stop on the center of this when I get them in place. So something else with this boat in particular, or anybody that plans on doing a boat with this build, now is the time to change some stuff if you want to. So one thing I want to change is that tune sticks out 11 inches past the end of what the old deck used to be. This used to be the end of the old deck, and I don't like that because I don't want that tune sticking out so far. So what's going to happen is it's going to get moved about 11 inches forward, so it'll stop closer to here. To make sure that's in line, what I'm going to do is take the piece of deck board that is attached to, get it in place on its other two cross members. Then I would take this one and move it to the front of that deck, flush it up, and it'll be perfectly straight, perfectly flush with the rest of the deck. I don't have to worry about mussing or fussing with alignments and getting holes drilled wrong. It'll be a solid way to do that. So, also another issue with this pontoon in particular is, so all these cross members are 24 on center. Again, if you don't know construction terms, the center of this cross member is 24 inches from the center of this cross member, except this guy here, the third cross member from the front. It is 22 from the one behind to this one, is 26 from this one to the one up front. Reason for that, if it was moved the 2 inches forward to make 24 on center, it would be sitting on top of this weld in the middle of the tune. They obviously didn't want that. It's not a big structural issue, it is something I have to compensate for. So, because from this cross member to the very front cross member will be 48 inches. So what I have to do to compensate is this cross member to this cross member, instead of being 48 like it should be, will actually be 46. That'll make up my 2 inches of difference. When this pontoon was originally built, this front piece here, real small, was a separate piece on its own. I don't structurally want to leave a small piece from here to about here, because depending on what size fence I put on here, that may be a seam and a gap and a crack. It makes a weak point. So use a full sheet at the very front. Use your small piece in the middle. and then you can do full sheets the whole rest of the way back. So I'm gonna get this moving, and then I'll be back once I get some progress done. Oh, actually, another side point. I rip a lot of sheet goods, so lots and lots of plywood, lots and lots of MDF. I use it for a lot of projects I do. I typically use what's called a door board, to where I mark where I want to cut my line. Door board gets clamped down exactly on that mark, and then my saw runs on it, gives me a perfectly straight line. I do not have an 8-foot long door board, and I need to cut this at 8 foot in length. So, other trick is, I've got this, sorry about that noise, fancy dancy rail system, where these two pieces of blue extruded aluminum will clamp together, be 8 foot long, and it'll act as a fence, except for I need to compensate. Most circular saws, from the edge that thing's going to run against, so it's going to run against it like that, to the inside of that blade, inside of the kerf of the blade, not the blade itself, the kerf of the teeth of the blade, is exactly 5 inches. So I'm going to cut this at 46. So to compensate, I will clamp my fence in at 41, and then I will make a perfectly straight line all the way across it. Simple trick if you don't do sheet goods often. It's better than trying to draw a straight line at your exact cut mark and then freehanding it. I'm not very good at freehanding. I don't know a whole lot of people that can freehand 8 feet of plywood, or at least marine grade plywood with a hand circular saw. I would use my table saw, except for it's covered in other projects right now, and I don't want to dig it out. So I'll be back when this is all tongue and groove together. Okay, so I'm actually going to bring this back and explain a little bit better what this is. So I need to cut this approximately 2 inches short. So what I do is, on my saw, it is 5 inches from the kerf of my blade to the edge of the plate at the bottom of the saw. So I put a rip fence in. It's clamped on both ends on a straight line, exactly 5 inches off of where I need to cut. Then, since this is actually a 2-piece straight edge, it's got a joint in the middle, and I'm always worried about the joint bending. I just take a framing square, or drywall square, and I clamp all the way across, and that makes a structurally sound thing. So if you push sideways, it won't bend, and it won't flex, so you won't get a dancing edge. This is the easiest way I've ever gotten a straight cut, or the most accurate way, I guess, instead of the easiest. Most accurate way I've gotten a straight cut at 8 foot lengths of plywood. I don't own a sheet saw, nor do I plan on ever buying one, just because of the amount of floor space they take. I don't have it. So hopefully people kind of understand what this setup does and what it gives me the ability to do, because I am anal about my straight cuts. So I'm gonna get this done, get this piece in place, and then we'll continue. Okay, we're back with a little more information. All right, so first piece is kind of in place. It's the lower piece that's right here. The next piece in the series will be this upper piece, is the one I took the 2 inches off. I've gone and cut my grooves in it, and what the groove is cut with is, you use what's called a slot cutter and a router. I could not find one locally, and I needed this thing today, so I got, it's called a tongue and groove bit. It's actually 2 slot cutters stacked on top of each other with a 1/4 inch gap in between. Each slot it cuts is a 1/4 inches deep. So the idea is, actually, you run it using just that bit to cut the groove. You lower it down to where it centers that groove, and you can cut your tongue. Well, again, I don't want to lose the distance and the length in my boards, since the cross members are set at 24 inches. So I am cutting grooves only, and I'm making what's called a floating tongue. This is another piece of 1/4 inch plywood. It's 8 foot long, so it's going to run the entire length between the two. It'll get put into the groove on one side and glued in. If I can get to flip over, it's very flimsy. And then the next piece will go in, and it will get glued in on the other side. So let me get this joint together. I'm going to tape these cross members up first and get the glue out and get glowing. You can, rule of thumb with gluing wood is, the glue physically is actually stronger than the wood itself. A proper glue joint will last longer than the wood. So you just want plenty of it in there. On a side note, I'm using 1/4 inch plywood. I have to cut a bunch of 1 inch strips. I need to cut like 6 of them in a row. This table saw is occupied. I am using, I believe this is called the rip fence from Craig. You clamp your circular saw into it, and it has a gauge on it to where you can determine your width of what you want to cut. I've had mixed results with this thing throughout the years. The wider you try to make your cut, the less accurate it is. Also, it will only duplicate whatever edge you are running that fence against. So how you set that thing up is it goes kind of like this, and it gets put against, the fence gets put against this edge of wood. If that edge is not straight, your cut will not be straight. It will only cut a parallel line. So keep that in mind. If you're not confident that you have a straight edge, or if the edge doesn't need to be as perfectly straight as possible, you need to chalk a line, set it up like I originally had it with a metal fence, cut a straight line, and then you can use that straight line as your reference point. So let me get some sheets together, and then... Okay, so got a good portion of the decking done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sheets of wood down. I'm going to cut it short due to I'm short one piece of wood. So the boat's 24 foot long, about 4 by 8 sheets of wood. 4 times 6 is 24, unless you're building a boat, in which case it doesn't work because you do have to trim some pieces narrow. Like this piece was 39 inches, 48, this one was 46, and then the front will be 48. So the back I can do in one of two ways. I either cut one piece at 33 inches to fill this void, and then I notch out for the motor, and I would have a wing on each side, or I do a 44 inch piece, which will come back to this cross member here, and then I would do a short piece from this cross member to the very end. Now that would work. What I'm planning on doing is I'm going to put a flip up ladder on this back corner piece, and I firmly believe the stress of the flip up ladder would make this a very weak board. It wouldn't last very long. So I'm going to make one piece to go from the very end to this board or beam, and then this beam to the other, and that should make it much stronger. Some things I've learned so far is, so I did the floating tongue and groove to every board. Now the deck is just laying on top of the boat. It's actually not bolted onto the boat right now. And what I want to do is get all of it in place all the way down the boat, make sure it's lined up perfectly, and then I would screw it down to each cross member. I think this would give me a straighter boat, and I don't have to worry about any of the boards or beams walking. But something I learned is the floating tongue that's in here is a 1/4 inch piece of plywood. The router bit that I'm using is a 1/4 inch also. Logic dictates that that would work, but when you fill the joint with glue, it becomes so tight you actually can't get it in. And I had that problem up at this joint where it's so tight I actually can't get it closed. So what I'm going to have to do is get the waterproof filler and fill this crack the entire way. Not ideal, but live and learn. It is what it is. So to resolve that problem, I use the router as it's set up, cut the 1/4 inch slot, then I crank it up 2 notches, and then it takes off about another 1/28 of an inch, and that gives enough room to get the tongue in and out with ease with glue in the joint. So I've got to get this covered up. There's a pretty good storm coming in. I got to go get another sheet of wood, and I'll be back when I'm ready to start building again. Okay, so we're back again. Sorry about the crackling in the background. It's my neighbor and his ridiculous rice burner. Likes to run laps in the neighborhood, cracking popcorn out of his exhaust. So, moving on to the rest of the deck. I've got 3 pieces left. They have to fit into this area. So one piece will go from this joint to midway on this beam. Next piece is, there's actually 2 tail pieces, one for each side of the boat, from here all the way to the end. Now, I have the transom well right here, so I've got to take the wood and actually cut this well out flush. So, how do I do that? Well, let's go to the piece that I have cut. this will be it. Maybe hard to see my lines here, but the lines here indicate where I need to cut out. I talked earlier about I do a lot of breakdown work with circular saws and sheet goods, and mentioned a device called a door board or rip fence. I'm not even sure what people call it anymore. You can look them up on YouTube on how to make these things. It's literally a 1/4 inch piece of plywood and then a 1 by whatever. You need to make sure that you have a nice jointed edge on that 1 by whatever to get a good straight line. And I can literally take this piece, set it on that line, and then my circular saw will ride this whole fence down. Get a perfectly straight cut every single time. Other problem that I've got is circular saws have a circular blade. So when I cut it, it's actually going to leave kind of a triangle piece where the circular saw blade was. To cut that out, I'm just going to grab a handsaw, use a jigsaw or whatever, and just cut that flush. So I'm going to get this cut, and I'll be back. Alright, we are back. The deck is fully installed. All pieces, all screws are in. She is tightened down, ready to go. This is what I was talking about in the back here, with the one narrow piece with the notch out, and then the 2 wings that come off of it. I believe this is the strongest way to do it. Every board, tongue, or floating tongue, engrooved. Lots and lots of screws. This thing had a lot of bounce to it until I started putting the screws in, and then it firmed up and got real solid. I also pulled all the paper from the sealant tape that I put on. I put sealant tape on every single cross member. It's not necessary. Just put it on the cross member where the seams of the boards are. So next plan will be tomorrow. I have to go through and putty every single screw hole, every single gap and crack, and try to make this surface as smooth as possible for the vinyl flooring, which everybody will get revealed once it's ready to roll out. So catch you in a few days. Okay, we are back. It's the next morning. All I've done today is I sanded the entire deck with a hand dual action rotary sander. Not trying to get it perfectly smooth. What I'm trying to do is find nubs, knots, things that stick out that are going to poke through the flooring or that you're going to be able to feel. So any screw heads that are sticking up too high, I can drill them down. Any chips of wood that are sticking up too high, I can pull them off. So there's that. I've also laid out my fencing. The masking tape marks that are all over the floor is actually where the new fence is going to go. The fence will be the 20-foot kit from fenceforpontoons.com. So each corner will get a radius corner, not radius, but new corner. 92 inches long, 28-inch gate, another 92 inches, 72 across the back. There'll be one stern entry 20-inch gate, 92 inches again, 28-inch gate, another 92, into another corner. Wraps all the way around. And there's a 28-inch gate in the middle. This boat will have, so actually perks of doing a boat this way, I get to redesign this however I want. It's going to have a 6-inch front deck before the gate. I wanted to do more. I wanted actually 18 inches, but I would have to go to the 18-foot 3-inch fence kit due to how wide or how deep the motor well cuts into the back of the boat. So I had to sacrifice some front deck to have adequate back deck. Back deck I got a couple inches before the motor well starts onto a swim platform on both sides. This side will have the boarding ladder attached to it. The other side will probably have the fuel tank sitting on it. I haven't found a fuel tank that actually goes underneath the deck into the transom well of this boat. So unless I can find one pretty shortly, it's just going to get gas tanks sitting on the back. Now I've got to cover the thing for the next couple days because I'm not going to be able to work on it. And when I come back, I should actually be able to lay the new luxury woven vinyl flooring down on it. Now, correction, before I can do that, I've got to fill in all the gaps. So I may do that tomorrow morning. go around. I've got a 2-part wood filler epoxy. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. When it sets up, it's supposed to act like wood. So I'll mix it up, fill all the cracks, screw heads, nail heads, bumps, everything. Let it sit for another day, sand it smooth, and then we will be able to lay the vinyl flooring. So hold on to your hats, we got more coming. Alright, next morning again. Sorry about the wind if you can hear it in the mic. We have a pretty good breeze going, which makes it nice to work. So I went through, took a 2-part wood filler epoxy. It's supposed to be an exterior grade and waterproof once dry. Filled every screw head, every gap, every seam. I don't know if it's totally necessary to do with the 80 mil woven vinyl flooring, because the stuff's pretty thick. It's supposed to be able to hide imperfections in the wood. But I'm going to do it anyway, just as an extra measure or precaution. I did leave, so the containers I bought I thought would be enough for this entire thing, but they were actually pretty not enough. Get a bigger container, what you think you need. So I left about the first couple inches towards the edge of the board open, like this spot here, because the trim that I have is actually going to go over this, so it's going to be hidden anyway. So next step, I got to let this dry, I got to sand it smooth, and then I'll be on to actually installing the vinyl. So hold on tight for more. Alright, so we're back again another couple days later, and the filler dried over the last couple days, and I have sanded it smooth. So you see the little white spots and stuff in here where the filler and screw heads were. Now smooth, hardly feel a thing. The thickness of the vinyl flooring should hide any other defects that I come across. I have also masked out the kind of furniture layout, what we decided to do. So the 2 fronts will be a book match set, so it'll be mirror image on the other side. But we'll have a corner wraparound piece, 55-inch bench, another corner wraparound piece. Again, this side will be a mirror image. Then the back corner, so we'll have a gate. Back corner is a 55-inch bench, corner wrapping piece, onto a 38-inch bench. The 55-inch bench, I'm thinking about putting an armrest cup holder on this end. I don't think I'm going to do it on the other end. There's room for it, but I think with the restricted 20-inch gate that they have in this back corner on the fence that I ordered, I think it'll be too tight, and I don't want to deal with that much construction coming through. I mean, because this is cut at 20 inches now, and it's pretty narrow. On the side, I didn't tape out the captain's chair because I know there's enough space for it. This will be captain's chair and console. The fence has already been ordered, and it's made to order, so they said about 10 days shipping, or 10 days before it even ships from the warehouse. So I've probably got till the end of next week before that even shows up. So in the meantime, I'm off the next few days. I plan on getting the vinyl flooring down and the deck edge trim installed. So hopefully next time you see this, the flooring will be stretched out on it, and we'll be getting ready to lay some glue. So it's coming together nicely. And fencing, furniture, and the part I'm dreading the most, the wiring. I've ripped all the wiring off of this boat. I have to put all the wiring back in the boat. Anybody who has done wiring or boat wiring feels my pain. So, see you again in a couple days.